we recommend you take this moment to do what we're about to do, which is enjoy an Alp.
Saturday we have a big meeting with them.
What do you hope to come?
And right now we have a meeting with President Putin as we speak. There's a meeting going on right now. But with Iran, I want them to flourish, but they can't have a nuclear.
I think you said in your question that I said we didn't provide them because of fears of World War III. I don't think that I ever said that about ATACMS. The reason why we didn't provide them originally is because the Secretary of Defense and the U.S. military told the President that the United States did not have enough of these in our inventory to meet our basic deterrence needs for the United States, and said essentially we do not recommend or advise that these be given to another country. Over time, over the course of 2 years, we produced more. We produced enough to be able to supply Ukraine with somewhere on the several hundred ATACMS. So that was one piece of it. The second piece of it was that in those early months, in the period of April, May of 2022, the question of escalation was different than it was in 2024. I said in response to an earlier question that Graham asked, did we learn? And were we willing to do things later in the war that we weren't earlier in the war? And the answer to that question was yes, because we were prepared to take on more risk as this went along. So part of the reason specific to ATACMS had to do with the Defense Department's objection on the number we had. And part of the overall approach that we took on a range of different decisions that the President made had to do with our learning about what the level of risk tolerance was for us to be able to supply Ukraine with what it needed, while also making sure that we didn't end up in an escalatory spiral. I would just say, in closing, that we ended up providing Ukraine with a very significant number of these systems, down to the level where, again, we basically have no more to give. And the idea that they made a major difference operationally in the war has not been borne out by the evidence. So I think a lot has been put on this ATACMS decision to suggest, oh, if only you'd given ATACMS, the war would have turned out totally differently. And yet the experience of the use of ATACMS by Ukraine on the battlefield, I think, suggests that that is not in fact the case.
Питання членства України в НАТО на порядку денному.
Таким був результат Вашингтонського саміту. Шлях України до НАТО незворотній і нічого не змінилося.
Сполучені Штати. Їх президент сказав, що Україна не вступить до НАТО.
Таким був результат Вашингтонського саміту. Шлях України до НАТО незворотній і нічого не змінилося. Коли ми говорили, що Україна одного дня стане членом НАТО, ми ніколи не обіцяли Україні, що це буде частиною мирної угоди. І, звичайно, те, над чим працює американський президент, я дуже радий, що він це робить і що він вийшов з глухого кута. Те, над чим він працює, приведення України до міцного довготривалого миру. Тобто не Мінськ-3, як ми мали раніше, а справжню мирну угоду, припинення вогню та мирну угоду. Але ніхто не обіцяв Україні, що членство в НАТО буде частиною мирної угоди. Але коли йдеться про майбутнє членство України в НАТО, то рішення, прийняті на Вашингтонському саміті, не змінені.
Welcome back to the SCIF. Thanks for joining us today. We pride ourselves here on bringing in some really good guests. And today we have two that are really focused on some of the biggest issues that we push here at the SCIF and at CDM. First is election integrity. And we're pleased to bring on Catherine Englebrecht here in a second for the first part of the show. And we're going to dig into what's happening on the ground because this is a big issue. There's a lot of frustration out there. So stay tuned for that. Second hour, we're going to have Tony Schaefer, and we're going to dig into what is happening with Iran, what really happened on 9/11. I mean, so much to talk about. The Ukraine war. We're going to go through all of this, so stick with us, and then we have another treat at the end of the show for you. But today is April 17th. I'm your host, L Todd Wood. This is the SCIF, and here's your mission brief. The duck goes to Washington to destroy negotiations over the Ukraine war. We'll talk about that in the Ukrainian perspective on what's going on in the negotiations. The political Fed needs to go away. Xi Jinping says we're all one big family in Asia, so let's all love each other and get along. Kumbaya. Now that the tariffs are on, Trump stops Israeli-Iran attack, and Russia wants to buy Boeing jets. All of those we'll dig into a little deeper, but I'm going to bring on Catherine, and we'll see what's going on in the election front. Catherine, thanks for joining us today. I appreciate it.
Hey, Todd. Thanks so much for having me.
Look, I mean, this is a huge issue. There's a lot of frustration out there. Everybody fought hard for these elections to get Trump in office. We achieved that. I'd love to know the story of how that happened at some point. Maybe it'll come out. But people are frustrated. There's been no. We put up a meme, the Gulf of no one's been arrested yet. I mean, nothing's going on that we can see. And Cash and Bongino and all of them say, well, it's coming, Bondi. But what say you? What's going on the election front, in your opinion?
Well, look, I'm the eternal optimist. I hope that it is coming, but so far, I've not seen a whole lot. Now, I have seen some good signs on the horizon. I mean, Doge taking an interest in assessing how the availability of data, federal data, could be used to assist states for purposes of keeping voter rolls clean. That's a big deal. Yeah. And certainly the president's executive order that requires that DHS make data available to states, which is something we were screaming from the rooftops about prior to the 2024 election, that you can't keep the voter rolls clean if you're not given access to the data that you need, which is particularly frustrating when it exists. It's just being withheld. And so those are some early indicators that they're getting with the program and helping to fix at least that leg of the process, or address that leg of the process. But, then there are other indications that are a little more worrisome to me, that suggest that the federal government wants to take a much heavier hand in the administration of elections, which is also something that True the Vote has fought against. While the federal government has a role to play, it's in supporting states. It's not in dictating the ways and means of elections that are the responsibility of our states to run, and that's something that we should vigorously defend. So, I wish it was happening faster. I wish, frankly, that True the Vote was more involved. We are, for all the talk about the CCP in elections, to the best of my knowledge, True the Vote is the only organization that has proven the definitive link by virtue of CONIC, which is a CCP front group running election software to this moment across our country. After we went public with what we knew about CONIC back in 2022, many large counties dropped the use of the software, but not all of them. Yeah. And so that's, and even if they all had, it's still something that should be investigated to understand.
Is Fulton County still using that CONIC?
Sorry?
Is Fulton County still using in Georgia?
Fulton County, to the best of my knowledge, Fulton County was not ever using CONIC.
Oh, okay.
I believe it was, and gosh, now I don't have it. I think it was DeKalb. Yeah, and I don't know. We went back and forth with DeKalb, and one of our frustrations with the state of Georgia is the cagey way in which they respond to open records requests. So, from what I recall, and this is just from memory, so give me some latitude here, but from memory, I believe that DeKalb was, at the time that we went public with what we had found from CONIC, DeKalb was considering using CONIC. And then we heard that they weren't going to use CONIC because they weren't going to use CONIC's server setup which we thought was a victory. And then shortly thereafter, as I recall, DeKalb did choose to use Conic, but the public statement was, we are using Conic, but don't worry because we're not using Conic servers. We've asked Conic to come into our servers in our data center and put the software directly in.
Oh, wow.
I mean, what
Wow. I didn't realize
insanity
that.
is that? But that's
So-
what I believe was the last thing I heard about the happenings in the DeKalb.
So I cut you off, and you're right. You have had direct experience with the CCP. Continue your thought if you remember what it was you were talking about.
Oh, just that. There are plenty of ghosts in the machines to chase for sure. But if you want hard evidence that I personally went to prison to prove up, then let's talk about that, because that is a clear and present danger and will lead to many other such dangers, because the connections are there and we can provide, the roadmap. Just like with the geospatial evidence that we provided to the FBI back in 2021, all of the cell phones. So it's our hope, a couple weeks ago, or maybe it was last week, we put out a newsletter that was titled Our Offer to the Trump Administration, and it lists all the things that we would love to share. And we're just, we're just waiting for the call, and maybe it will come. But so far it hasn't, and that's okay, because clearly this is the most ambitious first 100 days of any administration in the history of our country. So they're not. There's no downtime over there. I'm not suggesting that there is. We're willing to wait our turn. I just am looking forward to the moment that turn comes, because we have a lot to share.
Well, there's you, and there's other people that if you were like Tucker interviewed Kurt Weldon the other day on 9/11, and he was one of the most biggest voices on what happened, but nobody called him during the commission that investigated it. It's a very similar situation. So I agree with you that that there needs to be a honeymoon period, if you will, to get through these big issues. But I think elections are the biggest issue, are they not? Because that's what's controlling everything.
Well, I'll tell you, we are going to blink, and it's going to be 2026. 36 governor's races up and this is presents a very different challenge, because this is not a top of the ticket race for the presidency, and so the attention will not be what it was in 2024. But yet 36 governor's races will decide the direction of our country as our states choose the path that they're going to follow. And so if we don't have a good ground game and good grassroots effort, there's great reason for concern. And so it is the fundamental underpinning of everything. Everything we do presupposes a free and fair election, and we could definitely use the energy from the bully pulpit of President Trump to draw attention to the need to get involved at the state level, because that's where the game's going to be in 2026. I mean, certainly, of course, always with the House, and there are going to be key Senate seats up as well. But at the state level, we cannot take our eye off the ball.
And that was your message you wanted to get out, that the local jurisdiction is where you have to stay involved to make change, and don't count on the federal government, although it would be nice if it came in. You mentioned Doge. To me, that's a huge gold mine of fraud. Go in and fix the voter rolls. Have you just heard about that, or do you know more, or do you think that will happen? I mean, what's your thoughts?
Yeah, no, we've been petitioning Doge since February, and writing and reaching out and sending letters and doing all that we can to draw attention to the access that Doge has. And there's in my opinion, there's a proper way to do this that would not compromise any data set that Doge may be given access to. And certainly I'm not advocating for True the Vote, or for I'm not suggesting that groups like ours be given access. What I am saying is build the pipeline, or roto-rooter out the pipeline between the federal government and the state governments, that will allow states to query databases that will help to determine identity, residency, and citizenship, which is what is necessary for the maintenance of voter rolls. It is nothing short of criminal that's not just common commonplace. It's common sense. In private industry, all day, every day, companies can make these decisions in real time. In fact, it's so the data is so readily available, and it is so achievable technically that I would even be willing to engage in a discussion about same-day voter registration if we had in that same process the ability to evaluate the efficacy of the registration itself,
Right.
because it's totally achievable. And so even if the states aren't given just straight access, the ability to query the data to get the yes, no answers that you need, I mean, it's just, again, it's common sense. And so Doge can help to facilitate that. And we have made available everything that all of our voter, our archive of voter rolls, all of the code that we have written to normalize the rolls across the states, and we've provided all of that to them. So again, it remains to be seen. There's a lot of discussion about it, and frankly, we'd love to work with them on it. But if they don't work with us and they just get the job done, that's okay too. We just want the job done.
I completely agree. Do you have a few more minutes? Can I take a quick
Sure.
break and come back? Okay, we'll be
Sure
right
thing.
back on the SCIF. Stay tuned for Catherine Englebrecht.
Your government doesn't care about you. That's why you need a medical emergency kit. It contains life-saving medications like ivermectin, Z-Pak, and antibiotics. Stock them before they block them.
True life Alp story. I got a call from a friend of mine yesterday, honestly, true story, who said his girlfriend had just broken up with him over Alp. He wouldn't stop. And I thought to myself, that's kind of sad. And he said, no, it's not sad. Imagine if I'd married her. Now I know I was saved. Then the next day, this same friend is driving at twice the speed limit through a major American city, pulled over by a cop in a speed trap. Cop takes his license registration, goes back to the patrol car, runs him, comes back, looks in the window, and sees a tin of Alp on the dashboard. Pauses, stunned, says to my friend, you use Alp? Yeah, I do, says my friend. So do I, says the cop. We all do. He looks at my friend thoughtfully and goes, drive safely, sir, and hands back his license and registration. No ticket. So in 2 days, he's saved from a tragic marriage to a girl who doesn't like Alp and a speeding ticket. All true. It's more than a nicotine patch.
Catherine, I wanted to get your opinion on the executive order that Trump did on the elections. It was comprehensive, but didn't go as far as it maybe could have. What are your thoughts?
Well, I mean, I think it was great just to see it as a level set for the conversation, that it's on the on the radar of the executive branch. I love the fact that it rescinded the previous executive order of President Biden, which catalyzed so much of the voter registration chaos by requiring that every government agency have as its primary purpose voter registration, and it because those same agencies were also supporting non-citizens, and there was no way to separate the wheat from the chaff there. The deeper that Doge gets into pulling back those layers of waste, fraud, and abuse that were expended on non-citizen government support, you're also going to find that they were registered through those same agencies. So seeing that being rescinded, I mean, that in itself was a mic drop. I do worry a little about the perception of overreach from the executive branch, from the federal government, into demanding, for example, that citizenship be proven for federal elections. It's a slippery slope because, again, it's common sense. Yes, that should happen. And if it is, if the goal is to be the anchor to point to the necessity, then I'm all for it. But as far as the federal government demanding the states to do this, it's a little dicier, because we should be ever vigilant in the protection of state-run elections. Decentralized elections are key to a representative republic. So, it didn't go as far as I would like, but it's a good step in the right direction, and we just have to be mindful that all the executive orders in the world cannot replace the power of citizen engagement at the local level.
Totally true. So Biden was all in on federal involvement in the elections, right? I mean, they were trying to centralize the whole thing, right?
Absolutely. They're, gosh, what did they call it? Who knows? America, whatever they called their bill. I think it was House Bill 1, and they resurrected it session after session, and it would have, had it passed, it would have, and it sought to federalize elections. So disaster averted on that front, but there's so much work to be done, and the bad news is there's so much work to be done. The good news is we're not trying to we're not trying to rescue astronauts from Mars. This is just a process to count votes and maintain records. It's not rocket science, and therefore it can be corrected. The process can be brought back to within a reasonable margin of error, recognizing that technology evolves and people change and move, and so it's always a dynamic setup that you got to contend with. But we can do so much better. And I was kidding with someone the other day. It would be, how awesome would it be to, within this cycle, see True the Vote become less of a research oriented and driven towards exposing the problems, rather just encouraging people to work in elections that are already running pretty smoothly. I mean, it would be an awesome change of positioning, and one we would welcome.
Is that kind of how you started? Was it actually going in and proving fraud, or did you start to get more citizen involvement?
Yeah, no, I mean, it's a great question. True the Vote was, it was never meant to be a thing. I mean, it was just a small group of folks that said, hey, we just don't have enough volunteers to work at elections. And that felt like something that we could do to serve, and never thought that it would go beyond one election. Never thought we would see the problems that we saw. It led to research projects that exposed what was happening in the voter rolls in Harris County, which is in Houston, in Texas. And things have never been the same since. But I still have deep inside the hope that at some point I can go back to a normal life. True the Vote won't be necessary in the same way I believe it still is today. And I would consider that a huge accomplishment, because it's not something that I don't want for election fraud to be a cottage industry. I want it to be solved, and I want us to be, we can argue about political policy all day long, but the process should be sacrosanct. It should be something that every American can believe in. That's the goal of True the Vote, and the minute that is achieved, we will take a totally different positioning, and one I would welcome. It can't happen fast enough, as far as I'm concerned.
Well, that's the only way, in my view, to save the republic, because everything stems from that. The political capture in Congress, the agencies, all of it gets solved. Look, vote by mail is a huge issue. We have a big presence in Florida, and in the August GOP primaries in Pinellas for Secretary of Supervisor of Elections, there were 219,000 created ballots requests on a Sunday when the office was closed that went out. Half of them were delivered. Actually, half of them were not able to be delivered, but half of those that were not able to be delivered were voted. And then the judge sealed all the evidence in the case. I mean, to me, that's just massive, massive in your face. It's not even the machines. It's just straight out, fraud.
Right.
Have you heard anything on this vote by mail issue? This is how they're doing it now, right? They move from technique to technique. I think in the past, maybe it was the machines and still is in some areas, but this vote by mail thing is huge in the last couple cycles.
Well, it's really we've long described election issues as a thousand front war. There are so many, from inaccurate voter rolls to the exploitation of mail-in ballots to the actual collection and management of those ballots to the questions about the software that's used in machines. I mean, it just to the media's hand in disinformation. So there's so many areas that need attention. Mail ballots, I believe, are one of the greatest problems that we face. There are many radical groups on the left that exist just to promote mail ballots. Vote from Home was an organization that existed long before COVID, and it was almost as though they sensed the opportunity coming with COVID to just blow the barn doors off of what had always been a very limited use of mail ballots. But many states only allowed mail ballots based on excuse. You had to be out of town or infirm or in the military or have a reason. Now we see states that just have permanent vote by mail, and that you get that ballot every cycle, whether you want it or not, whether you move or not. And because there is no standard for reconciling the accuracy of the voter rolls with the accuracy of the mail ballots, you end up with all kinds of weaknesses and vulnerabilities that are easily exploited. So I think mail ballots are a huge problem, not just in the process of delivering those ballots, but in the information that's actually expected to be returned by the voter. And when it doesn't meet that standard, ballots still count when they come in after the deadline. The only way to address it, as you've pointed out, is to fight it out. And this is it's a difficult slug, but fight it out in court. And you've got to be willing to take it all the way to the Supreme Court. And I will say that with True the Vote, everything that we do, if we enter into a lawsuit, we are anticipating that it will go the distance, meaning all the way to the U.S. Supreme Court. You cannot settle or stop. You must press on. And
what about judicial corruption? Are you involved in any efforts to try to mitigate that? Because it's massive.
I've certainly experienced them. I've certainly, had the heavy hand of Article 3 judges who will tell you from the bench that they can do whatever they want to do and have. So right now, the only thing I can really point to is, the abuse that we have taken. There's a story that we've not discussed publicly, but that is, and I'll maybe give you a little bit of an exclusive here. We've just become aware, I say we, myself and Greg Phillips, that for years, starting in 2022, there was apparently a criminal investigation, a grand jury called to try and find some reason to indict us. And the way that we found out about this all these years later was that all of our records through Google and Apple and Microsoft were seized. And we did not know this, but only just within the last few months have we received notification from those entities that they can now tell us that all of our information was subpoenaed. The reason that they did it in secret in a grand jury through the U.S. District Attorney was in the Northern District of New York, and went on for years. They seized our records going back to 2017. We had no idea. This was during the time of Connick. This is when we were in prison. This is, I mean, it's sad to say, but you have to stop and think, which direction could it have come from? Our work with the FBI when they decided to make us the targets? Could it have come from Connick and the hand that they had in orchestrating all of this through, the Chinese Communist Party? Sadly, we were in the eye of many storms, but it's just another example of, the exploitation of our judiciary. And here we are now in 2025, just learning that in 2022, everything I had, Todd, everything, all my texts, my photos, my documents, all my stuff in my iCloud, all my Google accounts, everything was seized for no purpose. Because trust me, if they would have found just the hint of wrongdoing,
Sure.
I would have been indicted. That was their goal. Clearly their goal. I was in prison at the time it was happening, and clearly it was their goal to keep us there.
Oh, that's depressing, but hopefully that can't happen in this administration, but who knows? What about the machines? Tulsi Gabbard put out a bomb in the cabinet meeting recently that, well, maybe the machines aren't that safe. What was your reaction to that?
I mean, machines
we
can
know
be
they're not,
hacked.
right?
Software
Yeah.
can be hacked. Everything is hackable. It's, the way to correct that is to require a level of transparency of everything from the source code to the outputs and audit logs. There are ways to manage the risk associated with introducing automation into a process. And here again, we find ourselves at a slippery slope, because it's easy to say, we should just go all paper ballots.
Yeah.
But let us not forget that we moved to machines from paper ballots because paper ballots can be easily exploited. I've seen other countries that manage their elections through the use of very sophisticated paper ballots that are every bit as secure as legal tender. There are many lessons we can learn from those countries. There are others that use blockchain and blockchain technology to create a distributed ledger that allows you to track and make immutable the facts of the ballots that are collected. So, I mean, America has been left in the dust over the last many decades by comparison. And, we are working on we're developing another documentary this time that we will produce, that the working title of which is Vote World. And the goal of the documentary is to share with Americans the ways in which other countries cast and count votes, and lessons learned, because there are a lot of things that we can learn from other countries. And I do think that, look, yes, are machines prone to problems? Absolutely, yes. But is there a way to control for them? Yes. I think we are, to some extent, I think we are asking the wrong questions, and we are also making the assumption that a silver bullet can solve the problem if we just reveal the corrupt code. And it's so much more complicated than that. It makes for a nice storyline, but it's much more complicated than that. And it's just one of the 1,000 fronts that we face in our elections.
Last question. Thank you for joining us today, by the way. Wisconsin is a mess. We just had a Supreme Court race that was didn't look real at all. What those people need help. Any ideas on how to help Wisconsin?
Sure. I mean, we spent all the month of March doing live in-person training for election challengers, trying to help bring attention to what was going on in their voter rolls. And the Wisconsin GOP, although True the Vote is a nonpartisan organization, I will say that because we have pro-liberty values, more often than not, volunteers who go through our training are going to align with the Republican Party. Not all, but many. And therefore, we have a clearer view of what's happening by virtue of feedback we get from people that we have trained. And in the 11th hour of that election, or pre-election, the Wisconsin GOP decided to suddenly engage. And they wanted to take the volunteers that had gone through our training, and they wanted to push them into a command and control environment and not communicate with each other, but only through their war room. And it's just, to win in an election like that, you've got to be on the ground and battling more than just 48 hours before the election. And so I feel like that's the shortcoming in so many states, is they show up when when the tailgate starts, and not in the off-season training that should be ongoing so that we're ready when the game comes.
Wow. Thanks for your time, Catherine. Really appreciate it. Love to have you back down the road. Thanks for your insight.
Thanks so
Important
much.
topic. Take care. We'll be right
Thanks so
back.
much. Bye.
Knowing how to invest your money is harder than ever before. Dealing with stock market volatility, record debt, and terrorist attacks requires new thinking. At U.S. Asset Management, we can help you see the world more clearly so that you can move beyond the chaos and invest with confidence. Call us, visit us online, or drop by our office. U.S. Asset Management, helping you make better decisions with your money.
Pandemic, we can never be caught unprepared again. And so many Americans, when COVID hit, they had nothing in the house. The stores were shut down and doctors' offices were shut down. And even if doctors prescribed drugs, hydroxychloroquine, ivermectin, pharmacists wouldn't fill the prescriptions. That was a nightmare.
Now the situation is much worse. We have these horrible supply chain problems. In our emergency medical kit at the Wellness Company, we have 8 prescription drugs that are all potentially life-saving.
Most people who died with COVID, they died in the hospital because they didn't receive early treatment.
Every American family should have one of these.
I can tell you the Wellness Company kit is the answer.
So we are in the factory in Kentucky. This is Alp World HQ, and we are at the end of the packing line. So I'm going to show you how it works. We have the card, throw it in there. There's a packing slip, and then you have the Alp. And 4, but that seems honestly like a lot. 3 now, but it's good. You just pack a punch that, you know, for a normal nicotine brand, it'd be like 8. You know, we think 3 is fine. Next one. Again, 4. Let's throw 3 in just to keep it fair. Okay? There you go. So you can see you can get fast at this. And really, it's just a matter of repetition. This is kind of the assembly line that, you know, Henry Ford devised so long ago.
Tucker's stealing all the applicants.
Welcome back to the SCIF. We want to shift gears a little bit. Catherine's always great. We'll have her back down the road. She's just fantastic, a wealth of knowledge. And Greg Phillips, the same way, and good friends of CDM, by the way. I want to shift to Ukraine, and this is one of our favorite topics, and we're going to delve into it with Tony Schaefer. But meet Taras Kapcha. His last name means duck, and you can see him there in this photo with the duck face. And we published this article back in 23. It starts here. We just added an update. But he was instrumental in suing all the foreign countries that stopped imports to Ukraine of food and other things like Poland and other, because of the disrespect Zelensky showed all these countries who were trying to help Ukraine. So he is an operative of the Soros regime, Mr. Duck, we'll call him, Taras Kapcha. Well, guess what? He was just sent to the UK with the UK personnel attorneys to Washington, D.C. to negotiate the minerals deal with President Trump and his team. So you have the Duck, who is a Soros operative. He's on the Renaissance Fund today, I believe, on the board, which is a Soros organization in Ukraine. He has been in D.C. With this attorney from the UK, essentially trying to get what they want out of the Trump administration. I don't think it went too well, but that may have been the whole point, that they did not want the negotiations to go well in Ukraine for the mineral deal, for the peace process, etc. So we're just giving you flavor. These are from sources on the ground about what's happening in Ukraine that we have, and we're continuing to bring these out. But this is just an example of the absurdity in Ukraine as to who actually runs the government, the Zelensky regime. You've got Zelensky, you've got Yermak, who is, we've reported there are rumors he's a double agent with Moscow. It's just a mess. They just extended their martial law for another 3 months instead of looking to make a peace deal, and that was done through the Ukrainian parliament, the Rada. And so they're not going to have elections for another 3 months either. They've extended this, I think, almost a dozen times for 3 months at a time. So nothing changing from the Ukrainian government as far as trying to find a peace deal with Washington, D.C. and with Russia, and to end the killing of their own people. There was another story out of Ukraine we're going to put out later today that President Poroshenko, the prior president, came out, and let me find exactly what he said. There's a tape which I can play next time, but he's talking about how he knew what was going to go on before the war. He said on this speech, the situation that we will defend Ukraine in 21 and 22, and my sources are saying, and this was a recent speech or a recent disclosure, nobody understood what his words were, but now we know he knew the plan. So President Poroshenko was in on all this, as most of them are. Once you reach that oligarch status, you're in on the rape of the country and the rape of resources, which is what essentially they're trying to do to the United States. So another huge story. Ukraine is a big part of our reporting. We've been there since 2015. Or before, actually 2014, all the way through Maidan, through the stuff with Giuliani in 2019 and 20. We did a lot of reporting there, and that's why we were deplatformed for 5 years, essentially, just now coming back. We just got our Twitter account back the other day that was lost in 2020, if you can believe that. 5 years later, we're still trying to get some of the other accounts back. So we're trying to merge them, but that's a mess. Anyway, they were effective in shutting us down, but we're hopefully not going to allow that to happen in the future. So moving on to the next story, the Fed. Jerome Powell said yesterday, and the markets reacted, that he's fine with keeping rates where they are. So short-term rates, which are short-term borrowing, less than 90 days, that the banks can do from the Fed in order to lend or to provide liquidity, are at 4.5%. That's pretty high historically over the last decade, which the Obama Fed kept rates at zero in order to run up all this debt, because they couldn't service this debt if rates were normal historical levels like 4 or 5%. So they kept it at zero to run up the debt, and then put it in Trump's lap, and then they are raising rates in order to hurt Trump and hurt the American economy. It's really maddening. It's another reason why the political Fed has to go. This is essentially just a banking cartel that is not working for the American people. It's working for other interests, globalist interests at this point. So Trump came out hard against Powell today, saying, look, dude, you got to go sooner than later. And we're going to watch and see what Trump does. But there's a lot of constitutional and legislative collisions on the course here, and the Supreme Court will probably have to get involved in this. Can Trump actually get rid of the leader of the Fed? And you just saw the EU, the ECB, the European Central Bank, lower its rates to 2.5% or so, I think, whereas ours were at 4.5%. And so this creates massive expense. It adds credit costs to anyone trying to get a loan. It dampens economic growth and activity, and Trump knows this. And so we've got to get rid of the Fed. It's just a massive problem, and Powell is an operator on the inside. In fact, a few years ago, the Fed said, well, we can't let Trump be successful. So if that's not political, I don't know what is. There's that tape, I forget the gentleman's name who said that, but that from the Fed. But that tape is going around again. So this is a battle to be seen and to be watched, and we're going to obviously do that. Next story I want to bring in is, by the way, I just want to bring this up, which is an article in the Federalist today, American Greatness. Trump confronts economic and geopolitical reality. This is exactly what I'm talking about in his fight with the Fed. He's essentially saying, whoops, I dropped it there, but you can find that on American Greatness. The article talks about how Trump is dealing with things now, because if he waits, the pain or even the destruction of America will be much worse down the road. And it's something we have to take our medicine and take the pain now, even if it hurts businesses or whatever in the short run. We have to decouple from China. We have to bring manufacturing back. Of course, I think Trump is a tactician, and he will manage this tariff scare and bond market puke and economic issue over the next few weeks to months. I think he will manage it well. We've seen that he came in and gave a 90-day pause the other day when the bond market started getting scared in the view of Secretary Bessent. And I think he'll do that again and find a way forward to minimize the pain on American businesses and maximize the pain on China and decouple from China. That is coming. Got to get ready for a brave new world. And we got to find a way to manufacture and sell goods here in the United States and not have these supply chains relied on in China and elsewhere. It's going to be interesting to watch, and we're going to stay on it. We're doing a lot more economic reporting at CDM, so please stay in touch with us for that. I'm going to take another quick break. We have Tony Schaefer at the top of the hour, and we're going to talk all things geopolitics, war, 9/11, etc. A lot to talk about. I'm looking forward to that discussion. We'll be right back.
Watching my friends gain more and more weight, and then eventually I got to tell you, this is a little dark, but bad diet literally killed my whole crew.
Wow.
Diabetes, a stroke, I mean, all kinds of stuff. It's like, you had a stroke? You're not even 50 years old. You guys got to quit eating this stuff. Your body knows what's what. You're not conscious of this. But that's why people will go to the refrigerator and they'll grab this and that and the other and put together this outrageously elaborate combination of foods. Your body's trying to reach balance. Unbeknownst to us, our bodies are always trying to reach homeostasis. You can't eat all of this stuff and expect to live a long time. And one thing led to another, and I went, forget this. We're going to make our own product. So we partnered with one of the world's top 3 biochemists where nutrition specific study is concerned. I said, all I want is the best nutritional and immune support product in the world. So we mixed it in yogurt. It's a powder. I got a bag of it here. I keep one on the console all the time, just so I can show people.
Yeah.
And it's a powder. Now, this is not candy. This is hardcore nutrition. And sugar is an enemy. And most people do not know that the reason these bellies are showing up on people all over the place, your body makes fat to store the toxins it can't get rid of. So it just puts them over here. But I can tell you this, you take this for 30 days and then lay off of it for 2 or 3 days, and you'll go, good grief, give me some more. Skin, nails, hair growing back. Cut yourself and it heals in half the time.
I'm David Cross, and you may know me from my election integrity work, but I also own U.S. Asset Management, an investment advisory practice. I've been an advisor for nearly 30 years, and one of the questions I get asked most frequently is, do I have enough money relative to other people my age? And while that's an interesting question, it's also the wrong question. The right question is do you have enough money to sustain your lifestyle for the rest of your life? This is a question you should know the answer to. This is what we do. Check us out at us-am.com and look for our big proud American Eagle logo.
We have foot, slogging over Africa. Foot, slogging over Africa. Boot, moving up and down again. There's no discharge in the war. 7, 6, 11.
Welcome back to the SCIF. I want to tag team on John B. Wells' ad, Nucleo Boost. We've gone into business with him on this. It is the best micronutrition element out there, supplement, and it's done with incredible research. It's got the bioaloe in it to put these substances into your cells at the cellular level. I didn't believe this bioaloe thing, but then I looked it up, and it's true. It's kind of like the zinc and the hydrochloroquine. The zinc is the bullet, but the hydrochloroquine kind of opens the door to get the zinc into your cell during COVID. So check it out. You can get the subscription. You can go to CDM Nutrition, cdmnutrition.com. The subscription is cheaper. monthly, but it's not candy, it's real. And we're getting a lot of good feedback. People say, wow, all these good things. And the one thing I get from our team is stamina, because we're working really hard 24/7. And it's fantastic to just get up the next day and do it all over again. Really provides fuel to your body. The kind of think of it as the potholes in the road that are filled. So when something comes along to attack your body's ready to go to defeat it. So it's really helped our team stay focused in the game and in the fight. So thank you. Go to cdmnutrition.com. The next issue I wanted to talk about is Xi Jinping. And I got to bring this up real quick. Bear with me 1 second. Xi wants everyone in Europe or in Asia to love him, and everyone, we're one big family, he says. And obviously they are being really impacted by all the tariffs. There's a lot of reports of ships and containers and truck traffic in China ground to a halt. Scores, if not hundreds, of ships canceled came out yesterday to the U.S. These are massive container ships that are being just laid off essentially, and the trip canceled because there's no cargo, because nobody's buying, because the prices are too high because of the tariffs. So this is really impacting the Chinese Communist Party. They have a thing called the mandate from heaven in China, which was the old emperor's mandate to rule. And if this goes on, Xi could lose that mandate from heaven, because he has so many people, he's got to keep them employed. And this is why they build cities and then tear them down, then build them again, tear them down, rings of cities all out in the bush that nobody lives in. That's all over the internet. You can check that on YouTube, of them destroying high-rise condo buildings, flat buildings, in order to build new ones. So Xi is in trouble. So what's he doing? He's going all around to Asia and saying we're all one big family. This is after, however, that the Chinese Communist Party has brutalized much of the public, or much of the citizens in the region, all over the South China Sea, the atolls and the islands all up and down. They've gone after the Philippines. They've been brutal to the Philippine Islands. There's a video on this I'll just show you, and you can see this. So what is that? That is Chinese warships harassing Philippine fishing ships in Philippine waters. So this is what they do. They want to take over these islands. So they go send, massive amounts of boats up there to scare these people, to brutalize these people, and to, essentially just terrorize them militarily, if not just killing them sometimes. And now Xi is saying, well, let's all be friends. We want to, we're one big happy Asian family fighting the United States. I don't think this is going to work, but it's interesting. It means the pressure on Xi Jinping is strong. In addition to that, he is talking about getting closer to Europe. And Europe is open, because a lot of these leaders are run by Xi Jinping. I think Macron and others are run by, an entity, the combination of the globalist and the Chinese Communist Party. I've said many times here that Europe's going to go to China and all this, especially these leaders who are beholden to Xi Jinping. You're seeing that now. But the problem is Europe has almost a $300 billion trade deficit with China, meaning China already sends $300 billion more than they take in, than Europe sends to them. So what do they want? More Chinese stuff? I mentioned I was on Russian TV the other day because I wanted the Russian people to understand that we want peace as Americans. I wasn't pro-Russia or pro-Ukrainian. We try to go down the middle, but we just said, look, we don't want war. So I gave that message to the Russian people, and afterward the producer came on and said, you know what we would really like in Russia? We would like cars from America. We would like American products on our shelves, instead of this cheap Chinese garbage that falls apart all the time, that nobody can trust. It's deadly sometimes. So it's not just an American problem. It's global that the Chinese have this reputation, but it is cheap. So, and some stuff's okay, but a lot of it is just cheap garbage. Another friend told me he bought a ladder from China. This is Michael Yan down in Panama. He was telling me his friend bought a ladder, and the first time he stepped on the ladder, the step cracked in two, and he almost broke his leg. So people want high quality goods. America needs to get its mojo back in manufacturing and deliver those goods. Another story that we're talking about is Iran. And let me just bring this story up. This is huge, actually. And Trump recently just stopped Israel from bombing Iran in May. I mean, this is massive. And he said, and the administration said, essentially, we're going to give diplomacy a try, and we're not going to start another war in Iran with Iran in the Middle East at this time. I mean, glory, hallelujah. This is what we voted for, President Trump. Thank you very much. We don't want another war in the Middle East. We don't want our, sailors and airmen in the region to be killed, which would happen. There would be ships sunk with these hypersonic missiles, guaranteed. U.S. Navy ships would be sunk, or freight ships. There would be aircraft shot down, pilots would die, and it would be it would be a horrific scene that could draw other countries in, like Russia, like China. It could destroy peace all around the world. I hope Trump gets this. It cannot happen. And we're so thankful for the Trump administration for stopping this conflict. We've been all over this from the beginning, and we've talked about how this can be solved from the inside. And if you want to learn how, get my book, Paying the Price, The Untold Story of the Iranian Resistance. And you'll learn about how the resistance inside Iran can take down the country from the inside out. We'll get to more stories after our talk with Tony Schaefer, who's coming on at the top of the hour. We're going to take another break, and we will be right back on the SCIF. The bird flu is circulating. We're getting more and more press, more fear mongering, more warnings about this. First, let's start with that. What say you on?
Well, what I say is it specifically is not circulating. It's in animals. There's one human, maybe two transmissions, no human-to-human transmission. And stand by, everybody. If there is some sort of sudden human-to-human transmission, you should immediately be suspicious that gain of function was involved with that. Just the fact that they're taking an animal virus and going nuts on it in the press and talking about it all the time, that to me leads me to believe that they have concerns that somebody is doing something with that virus, because this would not happen naturally, in my opinion.
Our world is changing rapidly. Many crucial systems we depend upon are collapsing. And the most important system that is failing is the food supply.
Mr. President, this Council is more than aware of the multiple challenges and threats the world is facing today. But the threat of famine, people starving slowly to death, must be a red line.
These food prices are going to keep going up, and they're going to keep feeding excuse after excuse, narrative after narrative.
Yeah.
Where you're going to have to get off that treadmill and start getting more autonomous with your own food growing.
You want to make sure that you can eat, because frankly, food is the biggest issue as we are going through these transitions.
But amidst the chaos, there is a path to resilience. Marjorie Wildcraft is the female leader of the survival and preparedness movement. Marjorie has taught millions of people how to grow an abundance of food in a grid-down situation, even if you have no experience, are older, or out of shape.
I've spent decades finding the fastest, easiest, and funnest ways for the average person to be able to grow a lot of food. I've created a step-by-step process that's so simple that even kids to elders have been using it in order to grow a lot of their own food. And you can too, even if you have no experience, you're older, or you're out of shape.
Growing your own food is like printing your own money. Get started today.
Welcome back to the Skip. We're waiting on Tony Schaefer to come on, so when he comes in, we'll jump right in. There's a story that we've been on, which is Boeing, and they have been really on a saga for the last 5-6 years since they had the MAX issues and really shoddy construction and multiple crashes. And you've seen over the last 2-3 years a lot of problems with Boeing aircraft. A lot of this is from the DEI stuff, lack of accountability. I think a lot of it is sabotage. I can't prove that, but we've talked about it on our Sabotage Sit Rep show many times. But Boeing's had its issues. But now the tide may be turning. You know, China came out a couple days ago and said, we're going to stop any Boeing imports, any parts or any airplanes. But the thing is, that doesn't really help them because they don't import hardly anything from Boeing. And we put that out yesterday, that the first Trump term kind of canceled all of that to China. So they don't really have leverage when it comes to Boeing. So Boeing has about 8,000 plus back orders, which there's no room in the line anyway, even if China wanted some. But guess what? Who wants Russian or Boeing jets? Russia. Europe and the United States has seized a couple $100 billion of assets of Russian bonds, et cetera, in overseas banks. And when this peace process is finalized, they want to buy jets with that money, which is really good for Boeing. You're seeing the stock move higher, and Boeing may be moving out of its doldrums for the last 5 years. I mean, that's typically happens when you have these value stocks. They get crushed by some reason that's systemic, and they have to work those reasons out, and they build a base. You know, Boeing's bouncing along $150 to $200 a share for years now, and it may be moving higher. It's up a few points today, even though the Chinese said they're not going to buy any stuff. It's due to this Russian issue. So we're going to stay looking at Boeing. It's important. It's a national treasure. It's a national export machine. And it's just really key to get that company doing well. I'm waiting on Tony Schaefer, and I think we're going to start an interview that we did with my commander. I was going to run it later in the show, and if Tony comes in, then I will stop it and bring Tony in. But at this point, I think I'm going to go ahead and start this interview. Rich Comer was my commander. He's also my instructor at the Air Force Academy. He's the guy that ran the last mission of the Southeast Asian War, the Maiguez incident, and the first mission of the Gulf War in Southwest Asia. He led a bunch of Apaches across the Iraqi border to take out a radar site with our helicopters. We were flying MH-53s, but just an outstanding leader. And, you know, I love history here, and we're going to focus on history. We need to know our history. And I learned a lot from General Comer, who was Lieutenant Colonel Comer when I first met him. But he was my commander at the 20th Special Operations Squadron. And I respect the man, and I think you guys would get a lot out of it. If Tony Schaefer comes in, then we will stop the interview and play the rest of it later and bring Tony in and talk about all this. But here we go with General Rich Comer, former commander of the 20th Special Operations Squadron and Vice Commander, Air Force Special Operations Command. He ended up pinning on a couple stars, but here we go. Operation. I'm excited to have with us today one of the most respected and admired people I know, Major General Richard Comer, retired, who actually was my English instructor at the United States Air Force Academy back in the day, and then my commander at the 20th Special Operations Squadron at Herbertville, Florida in the early 90s. Welcome, General. Thank you for coming on.
Good to see you, Don.
So before we get into the war stories, I want to ask you a question. When I walked into the 20th, you told me 3 things. You said, be combat ready. I don't care about the paperwork, but be ready to go at all times. And you said, don't screw around with your buddy's wife when he's deployed. And you said, don't lie to me or I'll out-process you on the steps of the squadron. So that stuck with me. What do you think about today's military leadership? Are they living up to that way of thinking?
Well, the ones that I know personally, yes. They're troubled by some of the orders they are given, but they consider the orders lawful, and therefore they obey. They've got to have that kind of integrity. I've had that conversation with a couple of guys and said, how do you sit with this? You know, there's some of this stuff. And, you know, they said, well, you know, the order I've been given is a lawful order. I obey it. And how I lead my people is between me and them. And we don't have problems here in the small special ops community that I am familiar with.
Right. And just for our audience sake, you were the commander of Air Force Special Operations Command for some time, just so they know who we're talking to. So,
well, I was the vice commander.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Of Air Force Special Ops.
My mistake.
At the time of 9/11, actually. So,
yeah. So we're deeply involved with the revitalization of special operations in the U.S. after 9/11 and the war on terror and all that. So, but before that happened, you were part of a very special incident back in 1975 called the Maiguez incident. You were a rotary wing pilot in the United States Air Force, which is a small community in itself. But tell us about that mission and the heroism you saw on that day.
Oh, gosh. Well, it was the last combat action of Southeast Asia.
Mm-hmm.
And it happened a month, well, actually 2 weeks after the evacuation of Saigon.
Mm-hmm.
The communists had taken over Cambodia in the middle of April. They finally took Phnom Penh, the capital city, on the 12th or 13th of April. And the Marines largely had evacuated all of the Americans and some of our allied personnel out of Phnom Penh on the 12th of April. I think it was the 12th of May that the Cambodian communist government now boarded a U.S. merchant ship, the SS Mayaguez, and took prisoner its 40-person crew. And the late on the day of the 13th, we in Nakhon Phanom, Thailand, which is way up in the northeast corner of Thailand, right on the Mekong River, just across from Laos, and the closest place in Thailand to going into North Vietnam, which is why that base was being used. It was used to fly rescue into North Vietnam, trying to pick up down airmen. And the base was still there in 75, and it was the base that we had 2 helicopter squadrons assigned. It was the rescue squadron flying HH-53s and the special ops squadron, the 21st Special Ops Squadron, flying CH-53s. There are some differences in the aircraft, but one difference you could see is the HHs have a refueling probe for air refueling, and the CHs did not. And what they had was extra large auxiliary tanks on the sides, whereas the 40th Rescue Squadron carried 450-gallon auxiliary tanks, one on each side. Special Ops Squadron had 650-gallon tanks on each side, and no air refueling probe. So both squadrons were tasked to fly down to Utapao on the southern coast of Thailand on the 13th, late in the afternoon, in such a way that nobody took off before dark. In fact, I was in the first formation of 3 that took off to head down to Utapao. And I think we took off at about 9:30 p.m. So we were going to get there 1 o'clock. It was about a 4-hour flight. So
Yeah.
we were going to get there right around 1 o'clock in the morning. And some of the special ops aircraft were tasked to go, and some of the rescue aircraft also. We didn't really know what our mission would be. It was a jumble at that time.
Yeah.
But when you get down to Utapau, somebody will be in charge and we'll sort out what we're supposed to do when we get there, because we had no ground forces.
Mm-hmm.
We just were flying helicopters down there.
Yeah.
As it turned out, the Special Ops Squadron loaded all of the any excess people that could be spared from the security police squadron, guy cops that guarded the Nakhon Phanom.
Yeah.
They took as many of those security policemen as they could, and were taken off and going down to Utapau as well. And one of them crashed coming out of Nakhon Phanom.
And why was that? I mean, you didn't have GPS in that day, no nav aids. I mean, how did you navigate at night over that kind of territory?
Yeah, we all flew at fairly high altitude. You know, we were like 4,000 feet.
Oh, really?
We were flying what you would call an instrument flight down there.
Gotcha.
And about 60% of the way down there was Karrat Air Base. And Karrat Air Base had all of the nav aids there. So
I see.
We steered straight out on a TACAN vector from the TACAN at Nakhon Phanom toward Karrat. And as we got out of range of that, we started coming into range of the one. And as we got out of range of the one in KP, we started picking up the one at Karrat.
Yeah.
And the same way you steer your vector toward Utapau, and they were close enough that you got reception of Utapau before you lost reception of Karrat.
Gotcha.
So that was not difficult. The only thing that was difficult about flying at night that night was the thunderstorms. But we did go through around.
Hey, good morning, Todd. I can't hear you. Oh, there we go.
We're producing on the fly here.
Hey, good morning.
Good morning. Thanks for coming on. Really appreciate it, man.
Sure.
So I'm curious. Let's start with this, and we can go wherever you want. But Tucker Carlson had Kurt Weldon on the other night, and he mentioned you several times. I'd like to know what your overall thoughts are on 9/11. I mean, I mean, I know this is a subject you've beat around the bush for 20 years, but what say you?
Well, I didn't really beat around the bush, but I've been pretty direct about it. I think that there were elements of the government that were working against the interests of the American people and facilitated the attack one way or another, either by omission or commission. I don't know which it is. That's, I think, what we're all trying to figure out.
Yeah.
There's no way these guys were successful in perpetrating an attack that was the scope essentially of the Pearl Harbor attack, at least in the casualty numbers, and by any measure of economic damage, it was 3 orders of magnitude worse than the sneak attack of the Japanese in World War II. So, but the result was the same. Think about this for a minute, Todd. That the result was us going to war, and that, I think, was one of the purposes behind whoever was on our side playing for the other team. And I think that's something that needs to be explored. But overall, you know, Kurt Weldon is a friend. I mean, we became friends during the time that I became a whistleblower. I became a whistleblower inadvertently. And I this is one of the things maybe your audience should understand. I never sought to be a whistleblower. I was actually, and I documented in Operation Dark Heart. Guys, You guys can pick it up. He talks about why they came after the book too during the thing.
So
if
let
you
me
read
just
this-
interject there.
Yeah.
They bought 10,000 and shredded them, right? But so this
They
is the
did.
second revision.
They did.
Am I right?
Yeah.
Is this
Yes.
redacted or?
It is redacted. Yeah, you've got see the little stuff in there, and if you see here, let's go back. Yeah, there's a bunch of these things.
Yeah. So that
And
book's available where?
256,
Anywhere?
I think.
Yeah. So
It's
the book is
still on
available
Amazon,
now.
still selling.
Yeah.
I still get royalties from it 20 to 15 years later. So yeah, it's still selling. So
Cool. Sorry, I interrupted
anyway,
you. Yeah.
my point being is that the activities in Darkheart, the book, I believe they went after and tried to stop the publishing, and they, as you point out, they did stop the initial run. They failed ultimately, which I think we could talk about that another day. There's a investigative reporter named Peter Lance.
Mhm.
You can Google this. Peter Lance did a article on me called "The Private War of Tony Schaefer," where he documents the whole going after me over the book thing, and it's a very long, detailed article. So I think people can just Google that, the Private War of Tony Schaefer by Peter Lance. Anyway, back to the book. The reason they went after the book, I believe, is because of the meeting at Bagram with Philip Zelikow, the staff director of the 9/11 Commission. And Kurt Weldon goes into good detail about that meeting from our discussions, and he highlights this with Tucker Carlson. So essentially, Able Danger, a lot of code words here, but Able Danger was the pre-9/11 operational planning mission assigned from Hugh Shelton, the chairman of the Joint Chiefs, to General Pete Schoonmaker, the commander of Special Operations Command. This is 1999. And what was significant is that this operations plan, this operations order, made SOCOM the lead command. That is the first time ever. SOCOM was always a supporting four-star command to other regional commands. But because this was seen as a global target, SOCOM was assigned as lead. That is to say, then all the other four-star commands have to come in and help. So it was groundbreaking from that perspective. It was groundbreaking from the technology perspective because we were using data mining, because there was no other way to really amalgamate and aggregate all the information about a global target. And so it was that was another brand new technology used. And then we were envisioning some weaponized technology that I still can't talk about. I've got to talk to, we're trying to get the Pentagon to declassify my role in Able Danger. I know that there's been, nobody really knows what my role was, because at the IG report, they said, oh, he was just a reservist. Well, that was my cover. Duh. So it's kind of like they try to use my cover for doing all this stuff as a justification, say, oh, he's just a reservist. He didn't know what he was doing. Yeah. Okay, sure. And so it all comes down to the point of where this was a plan on a offensive plan to defeat Al-Qaeda before 9/11 because of what we'd seen with the embassy bombings in Africa and other things that were going on regarding their Al-Qaeda growing threat to the United States. So this was Able Danger was a response to that threat. And the big mystery is, Todd, it was all put together, ready to go, briefed at Hugh Shelton in January of 2001, and we were stopped. The team was stopped, flat out stopped. We were told to stand down. So that's one of the big mysteries. Why would you put together this massive, multi-tiered global anti-terrorism effort designed to kill bin Laden or take out the infrastructure and then stop it right before they attack?
So 9/11 happened shortly after that. So and that became kind of the special operations show. I mean, there was a lot of money spent, a lot of capability built.
Yeah.
But do you think, if I wouldn't have believed all this 5 years ago? I had the scales on. I was, rah. I was all pro Bush back in the day. But if you look back through these several cycles, man, I mean, it's pretty damn obvious now that there's been something going on for a long time, all the way back to the Gulf of Tonkin or before, right? I mean, because we didn't want to win these wars. We just wanted them to keep going, I mean, that was it,
Yeah.
right? Just to spend the money.
So
Do you
yeah,
agree?
I covered that in Dark Heart too, because Dark Heart, fast forward after 9/11, and to your point, Steve Cambone testified in I think it was an open hearing in 2005 when we had the hearings on this. No, it was February 2006. Steve Cambone testified. This was completely ignored. That he said, while they dispute our claims regarding the Able Danger operation, he did admit that they used the plan to go after Al Qaeda after 9/11. So it's like, okay, dude, you kind of made our point. They picked up the plan we had developed to go after him before 9/11 and used it after the fact. The question becomes, why didn't you just let us use it before 9/11? Because that was what it was supposed to do. Anyway, fast forward to Able Danger. I mean, to Operation Dark Heart. Dark Heart was our concept to go into Pakistan to kill Zawahiri. That's what it was all about. And we believed as a team, we were, at the time I was there in 2003, there was about 11,000, between 11 and 15,000 U.S. forces. We didn't have a lot. So we were so lean and mean. We were on the offensive. We weren't trying to nation build. We were trying to go kill bad guys, which should have always been the mission. And then in the book, I confront David Barno, who became part of Michel Flournoy's group. Michel Flournoy created the Center for New American Security. It's a deep state think tank, just saying.
Yeah,
Spoiler alert.
Most of them are.
Yeah. So one of the deep state guys, Barno, decides, I don't want to chase bad guys. I'm going to make Afghanistan into Minot, North Dakota. We're going to make them American. And so they decided to make it into a counterinsurgency, which turned us from a small group of special operations and intelligence folks, which I document in Operation Dark Heart, into this, making Bagram into a big base, turning the whole country, occupying the country effectively, putting up 100,000 troops, near 100,000 troops total at the high water mark of Afghanistan. And I said at the time when they started this nonsense, the moment we pull out, everything goes back to where it was before. And sure enough, that's what happened. So,
well, let's switch gears from Afghanistan. I mean, I think the 9/11 story, by the way, is just getting started. I mean,
yes, I'd like to believe so.
A lot is going to come out there. I had Jake Sullivan on the cold open in a recent speech he gave, and he was saying, well, we considered the risks, and later on we felt like we could take the risk to target Russia deep range with the ATACMS and all, and cruise missiles and everything else, Moscow. But I don't think I guess, what's your thoughts on the Ukraine situation? I don't know where you stand there. So what do you think?
So I agree with Marco Rubio, the admission that it's a proxy war between us and the Russians. My view is, I didn't see Congress approving a proxy war with us and the Russians. Just saying, I must have missed that. So at this point, when I don't dispute what you just said, I dispute the fact that they had any idea of what to do with you use the attack on. What are you trying to achieve? One of the things that I've noticed is that we have a military that, and think about this for a second, Todd. We've had a whole generation of military officers serve, get promoted, get all these nice medals on their chest, and accomplish absolutely nothing. To especially Mark Milley. Just saying. It's like,
and in fact, cause a lot of destruction, and instead of not accomplishing.
So my question becomes then, why have we allowed the system to become focused on measures of performance, MOP, versus measures of effectiveness, MOE?
Outcomes. Yeah.
Now there's a distinction with a great difference. So measures of performance, like, hey, did you wear high heels and do it well? Well, yes, I did. So you performed well to that point. But were you effective? Did you stop the bad guys? Well, no, I didn't. Well, that's why they do it measures of performance, not measures of effectiveness.
Right.
Because you can create any performance point artificially. Like, did you show up to work every day with a smile? Yes, I did.
DEI is a perfect example of that, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So
exactly. So what we failed to do, and what we used to do, and the standard I came up with in the Army, is were you effective? Because I used to get, full disclosure, I used to get in a lot of trouble. I was a hellion, just letting you all know. I mean, I'm pretty honest in the book how much of a hellion I am. So a lot of the time I was in trouble, but I was getting my job done. It's like, yeah, he's doing it. He's doing these stupid things. He's sleeping with the general's driver and he's doing all that, but he's getting his job done. I'm just saying, I'm no saint. I'm no saint at all. As I told people, I won my election here in Chihuahua County as a commissioner. It's like, I'm a retired spy, and I did everything spies do. It's like, yeah, we don't care. It's like, okay. So I'm just saying that as spies go, I was a typical spy, but I was effective. I would be assigned a series of missions and tasks or being put in command, and I would get it done. That was my job, to be effective. And they've gotten away from that. It's all about this artificial performance stuff that has no relevance to operational success or military strategic operational excellence. So that's where we're going wrong.
Well, you see that in Ukraine. I mean, with this C2 cell in Wiesbaden,
exactly,
with the British generals. I mean, just corruption and failure all the way around.
Exactly.
I've been against this war literally for over a decade because I saw it early that this is not our fight, and it's going to.
I'm with you, 110%. Yeah.
So my question to you now is: you've been kind of in the same circles I've been over the past, but where do you see this going? I mean, how do you see this ending? How do we get out of it?
Well, we end it by ending it. Period. The president. Let me be careful here.
Mm-hmm.
I have not talked to the president. I have not talked to the Pentagon. But if I'm reading the tea leaves correctly, it's ended. This is the Ukrainians don't know it's ended. So all the basic military supply, all the supplies that are in the pipe going are from Biden. Ain't nothing else coming. That's it. So President Trump is at least being reasonable and allowing it to go through, but he's made it very clear. It's like, this is not my war. This is not a U.S. war. We're going to stop it. So if nothing else, Todd, by July, the supply chain from us will be ended, and the Ukrainians will have to end it. They're going to have no choice because otherwise the Russians will use a military solution. Putin has already said, he's used very clear language. They've got the 9th of May celebration coming up. He's invoked the Great Patriotic War. He's invoked all these images of winning World War II against the Nazis. He's basically said, hey, the modern Nazis are the Ukrainians, just saying. So if Zelensky doesn't come to an understanding, if the Europeans continue to use the bellicose language and say, oh, we're going to replace the United States, they won't. They can't.
No, they don't have.
It's like, no. But they keep, so if Zelensky and the Europeans keep playing this, oh, we're just going to keep the war going on our own, the Russians will end it because they will end it in a military victory over, because they've called up 160,000 reservists. General Cavoli, the EUCOM commander, I think, was saying the other day in testimony, oh, they're exhausted. No, it's called an operational pause. They're going into an operational pause so they can consider avenues of approach and best configuration to use their resources. That's
that was a ridiculous, immature, and deceitful performance in front of the Senate Armed Services Committee.
Oh yeah, horrible.
Horrible. I thought. We delved into that pretty heavily. You know, there's a new narrative coming. You mentioned it, so I just want to bring this up. This is a new narrative coming out of Moscow. Eurofascism, just like 80 years ago, meaning the U.S. and Russia against a fascist Europe. I mean, there's some truth to that. Am I wrong?
Yeah. Fico, the leader of which country it is, Fico has said, the leader, I can't remember what country it is, has said, I'm going to attend the May 9th.
It's Slovakia. Yeah.
Slovakia. He said, I'm going. And van der Leyden has warned him, saying, oh, there'll be consequences. And he basically came back. This is all public, though. You all can read this. He basically came back and said, I'm a leader of a country.
Yeah,
I can go and do what I want as a leader of a country. You can't threaten me. And oh, by the way, van der Leyden, you're kind of proving the Russians' point. You're kind of making their point by you telling us what we can and cannot do. And so, yeah, the Europeans are kind of proving the Russians' point. Just saying. And I'm not pro-Russian.
Yeah, I'm pro-truth. That's what I want, and pro-American.
Yeah, you and me both.
I don't want our boys and girls over there because it's a hellhole and they don't need to be there.
Yep.
Let's shift to the Middle East. Trump came out and said that he stopped, or the New York Times said today he stopped the Israeli attack on Iran's nuclear facilities in May. I think that's a good idea. I don't think we need a massive war, another one in the Middle East. There'll be lots of death in the Navy, air assets, and I don't think we can afford it. What say you?
I agree. So I believe that we've missed opportunities going back to 2009. The greatest opportunity, I believe, to halt the nuclear program was by an internal revolution known as the Green Revolution.
Right there with you, man. Yeah.
If you have internal problems, look, this was the whole idea of Operation Dark Heart to make. The idea is like, if you're causing such chaos internally in that organization, they can't look externally. They got to focus on the inside. So that's what we should have done.
And it's homegrown. It's already there.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So we should have said, yeah, we're all for regime change. It's like, oh, we're not promoting regime. I don't care. We should promote regime change. The theocracy that runs Iran is dangerous to everybody. Most dangerous to the people who live in Iran, the Persians. So we should encourage them to rise up. I don't think we should do it, but we should. It's like, hey, if you guys rise up, we'll be there to help you on the other end. Once you get your act together. But a democratic Iran would not be acting the way it is. And I do believe that the theocracy there, that the Shia do have a bent on destroying the Israelis, but not only the Israelis, the Sunni. They hate the Arabs as much as the Israelis. People tend to forget that.
Yeah.
So the bottom line is, yeah, we don't want to jump in there and attack. I think we can do it through unconventional methods, which is I'm an unconventional warrior.
Yeah,
that's what that's always my first choice.
Yeah.
Kinetic operations always lead to bad things, and I think we can avoid bad things by doing it other ways.
Yeah, I actually just wrote a book on that. Let me just plug that. Paying the Price, The Untold Story of the Iranian Resistance. You can get it at historyofbooks.com. What else, Tony? What else do you think is important right now geopolitically? I mean, going around the world.
Look, the southwest border, we've had this knucklehead, Chris Van Hollen, trying to remove from El Salvador an El Salvadorian citizen.
Yeah.
It's like,
pretty amazing.
No, he's a citizen of their country. It's like, he's not a Maryland man. And so my view of it is, Todd, it is terrible that he is separated from his family. So I believe we should, as a priority, move his family from Maryland to El Salvador.
That's the go-to solution right there.
That's right.
Tony, what's the name of the book again? Dark
Operation. Well, I got several out, but
okay.
The main one, the first one that really does relate to what we're talking about regarding 9/11 is Operation Dark Heart. Let me see if I can get that there. There we go.
Got it. Yep.
Yeah, it's on Amazon. And despite the redactions, you can still figure out what's going on. They made us change the name of people, like my boss, Colonel Oliveira, Jose Oliveira. We're still dear friends. They made me change his name to Juan Negro. Okay, if that makes you feel better, whatever. But and we won our. By the way, we won our First Amendment lawsuit against the government. We're eventually going to publish an unredacted version with all the names restored and everything else. But people still buy it now, and it's fine.
What do you see coming in 9/11? I want to stay on this like Tucker wants to. What do you see? What do you see dropping?
Full disclosure, yeah, I've talked to Tucker about this, and Tucker wants, I believe, to have a full disclosure of everything. My view, as I mentioned when you first asked me the question, is we need to figure out what our government role was. Was it omission or commission? Right after the attack, the Saudis were flown out of the nation. That was the only air traffic. And the reason that happened is because George Bush, 43, had a very close relationship with the Saudis.
Yeah.
So it turned out that most of the attackers were Saudi.
Yeah.
I don't think it's a coincidence, just saying.
Yeah.
So, and we still have 9/11 guys down in Guantanamo. I full disclosure, I'm in touch with their defense teams. I've actually been helping the defense teams because the defense teams actually want the truth too. I'm just telling you that you would be surprised some of the bedfellows behind the scenes who are working to get the truth out. You would be surprised. That's, by the way, the goings on behind the scenes right now would be worth either an X-Files or an episode of 24. Probably an episode of 24.
Well, we'll just have you back on a lot. That's all. We'll just let
we'll
you
see what
explain.
happens. Yeah.
So yeah, there's still information blocked on the Saudi stuff. Obviously, hopefully that'll come out. Tony, thanks, man. Really appreciate you coming on the show. I'm
Thank you,
glad
Todd.
somebody reached out to us. We'll have you back. Take care.
Thank you. Thanks.
The bird flu is circulating. We're getting more and more press, more fear mongering, more warnings about this. First, let's start with that. What say you on?
Well, what I say is it specifically is not circulating. It's in animals. There's one human, maybe two transmissions, no human-to-human transmission. And stand by, everybody. If there is some sort of sudden human-to-human transmission, you should immediately be suspicious that gain of function was involved with that. Just the fact that they're taking an animal virus and going nuts on it in the press and talking about it all the time, that to me leads me to believe that they have concerns that somebody is doing something with that virus, because this would not happen naturally, in my opinion.
Our world is changing rapidly. Many crucial systems we depend upon are collapsing. And the most important system that is failing is the food supply.
Mr. President, this Council is more than aware of the multiple challenges and threats the world is facing today. But the threat of famine, people starving slowly to death, must be a red line.
And these food prices are going to keep going up and up, and they're going to keep feeding excuse after excuse, narrative after narrative.
Yeah.
Where you're going to have to get off that treadmill and start getting more autonomous with your own food growing.
You want to make sure that you can eat, because frankly, food is the biggest issue as we are going through these transitions.
But amidst the chaos, there is a path to resilience. Marjorie Wildcraft is the female leader of the survival and preparedness movement. Marjorie has taught millions of people how to grow an abundance of food in a grid-down situation, even if you have no experience, are older, or out of shape.
I've spent decades finding the fastest, easiest, and funnest ways for the average person to be able to grow a lot of food. I've created a step-by-step process that's so simple that even kids to elders have been using it in order to grow a lot of their own food. And you can too, even if you have no experience, you're older, or you're out of shape.
Growing your own food is like printing your own money. Get started today.
Welcome back to the SCIF. Really enjoyed Tony Schaefer. We're going to have him back on a lot, I think, going forward. Great guest today. We were in the middle of the interview because I had to start it because he showed up late with General Rich Comer, former Vice Commander, Air Force Special Operations Command, talking about the Maguez incident, which was the last combat action of Southeast Asia, which he was on. He's gone through how they got leading up to the mission, and I'm going to bring this on and restart this interview. We'll play another 10 minutes or so, and then we'll play the rest later. So here we go.
And pass around quite a bit of thunderstorms in that time of year in Thailand.
So why did this aircraft crash?
It had a built-in material problem, as it turned out, in the blade root that caused the blade root to fail in such a way that the blade tore itself off the aircraft. And
terrible. Yeah.
with the loss of a rotor blade off the main rotor head, the imbalance was such that the aircraft kind of Cuisinarted itself.
Yeah, disintegrated. Yeah.
And, and they were at 9,000 feet when it happened.
Yeah, no chance.
They flew under an instrument flight plan coming down there, and they were up at altitude about 30 miles south of NKP when it happened. And so there was a big rescue operation going on in the middle of the night in there south of NKP, and our rescue guys who were on alert down at Karat were being launched to go back toward NKP as we were passing overhead on the way down to Utapau.
Gotcha.
And they were going up for a crash by the 21st SOF. So when you look at the casualties, the killed in the Mayaguez operation, 23 of them died 18 hours before the combat operation started.
I see.
So we lost 41 people on that operation to save the 40 crew members.
Yeah.
So some people say not a good trade, but military people, that's their job to sacrifice for the civilians.
Sure.
And so we got down there at about, like I said, just parked the aircraft. We were getting out of the aircraft. It's one in the morning. A person there said, "You're to go to billeting and get yourself a room and put your stuff in the room. Then be back here at 4:30 to brief for your mission, because we're going to fly you back out of here on your mission, and we'll brief you at 4:30.
So no sleep.
So no sleep. But we ended up in a line to check in at the billeting place. They gave us a couple of trucks to drive, and we were involved in that. So it took about an hour to get a room, and then we put our stuff in, and we went to a chow hall, and they gave us a lot of coffee and some breakfast.
Yeah.
This was 3:30 in the morning. 4:30 we were there. They briefed us. Our job was to go take security policemen between the Utapau security policemen and the NKP security policemen. That was to be our ground force on the morning of the 14th, and fly to the Mayaguez and hover over its shipping containers and get low enough so that people could jump out of the crew door.
So these are security police. They're not really trained for boat takedowns, right?
True.
Yeah.
And they were going, and our orders were for that to happen. If
Yeah.
the president gave an execute order on the morning of the 14th that day, we had to do with what we had. And
Right.
we had security policemen and helicopters.
Yeah. Gotcha.
So that was the order. And they assigned a group of security policemen to each helicopter. We gave them their briefing on riding in the helicopter and everything on what we were to do. And we got in the cockpit. We were to take off at like 6 o'clock, something like that. And we were waiting for an execute order. So our Vern Sheffield, our assistant ops officer, was going to come out of the building and do this. It was time to turn rotors and go.
Yeah.
If not, it was this.
Gotcha.
Get out of your cockpits and stand by. And
Right.
that's the sign we got on the morning of the 14th. And we were to stay at our helicopters and be ready.
Right.
And it was getting pretty hot out there. And I remember what I did was I slid over under the aux tank on the helicopter, that 450-gallon aux tank, which we had just refueled a little bit ago. So it was kind of cool underneath there. And it was in the shade. And I had a helmet bag for my pillow. And I took a nap. I took a nap right there. And as things went on during the morning, 141s were arriving. And I guess they were coming in from Okinawa, I think. And
bringing Marines?
we were getting Marines to each helicopter, and they were arriving to each helicopter, and they displaced the security policemen. The security policemen were relieved of the mission. Now we had a group of 23 or 24 Marines, 25 Marines, I think. And there was a lieutenant there, and I said, "Do you know what you're assigned to do?" And he said, "We're gonna board a ship." I said, "Yeah, it's an American ship, it's a container vessel. We're going to hover over it. You guys are to get out the door."
So they had no fast ropes at that point, right?
And all that. No, we'd never done that.
Yeah.
And we were kind of ready for that. And I said, we don't know if there's any Cambodians. We assume there are Cambodians on board that ship. And if they oppose our hovering over it and everything, it could be like a hot landing zone.
Yeah, hot LZ.
And the lieutenant went to go talk to his captain, who was on a different helicopter. And he came back, and we were all still napping around the aircraft. And about 2:00 in the afternoon, they told us, "Mission's off for today, rebrief for tomorrow." At that point in time, we had crews arriving from Nakhon Phanom. They came in on the mail C-130 that delivered the mail around to the bases. And that C-130, I think, originated every day from Utapao because the mail would come in by ship, I think. And as it came in from Nakhon Phanom, crews got out and said, "Fresh crews," and they swapped out crews on aircraft. At this time, my crew was displaced. We had no aircraft. And our job was to stand by. The mission rebriefed in the morning early. We were told, for our crew, said, "Sleep as long as you can. We'll be calling you when the time comes."
Yeah. Quick question: Did you have miniguns and 50 cals on the helicopters, or were they armed?
All of them had miniguns. We had 3 gun positions on the rescue aircraft. I was a rescue guy, and I was a second lieutenant co-pilot at the time. The 21st SOS aircraft had gun positions on each side. They did not have one on the ramp because they loaded equipment and vehicles and everything through the ramp so much. The rescue aircraft expected to do rescue hoist operations.
Gotcha.
To pick somebody up off the ground with the rescue hoist. And so we had 3 guns to encourage the enemy to keep their heads down while we conducted a rescue. Of course, the side on the right, we had to swing the gun out of the way to operate the rescue horse. So if we were in a hover doing a rescue horse, we only had 2 guns.
Gotcha.
So this was our situation. And at the time, we knew there was one destroyer out there that was in the vicinity, a U.S. destroyer with a small landing deck that was too small for an H-53. And no other ships were in the area that we knew of as yet. We knew that they were on the way from the Philippines, but and had been coming that way since the 12th. We didn't know where they were at the time. So the briefing happened that morning at like 3 a.m. And the crews got on the helicopters and they took off before daylight, and arrived at dawn or thereabouts, first light, out at Tang Island, Koh Tang. In I guess Cambodian language, Koh Tang means Tang Island. So so the place name for us was Kotang. We didn't even know what those words meant, but
Right.
so to fly out to Kotang Island was what we were going to do. And on the island, it was a jungle island.
Yeah.
And it had kind of a peninsula sticking out the north end, and it had a sandy beach on both sides of this peninsula and a ridge line in the middle between, and it was completely jungle covered. But the sandy beaches on those, just at those two spots up on the north, were the only place where you could get a helicopter on the ground. So those were the brief landing zones. The primary mission of the 21st SOS, which could carry more troops, was to lead the landing on the island. The first 3 H-53s flew out to the Holt, the Howard, I think it was Howard E. Holt, name of the destroyer, hovered over the landing zone with the nose gear on it.
Yeah.
That landing pad, and the guys got out the right side crew door, and they put Marines out that way, and at first light, and they, instead of going to the MIGAs, they went to the destroyer, put the Marines on the destroyer. The destroyer then went to the MIGAs while the first landing operation was going on.
Gotcha.
And the destroyer went to the MIGAs, the ship that was anchored off the coast of the island, and they did a takedown of the ship to ship, pirate style, I guess.
Gotcha.
And they found the ship empty.
Mm-hmm.
There was nobody on it. I think the Cambodians saw them coming, jumped on their little boats, and got out of there.
Yeah.
But that recovered the MIGAS ship. The crew, it was believed, was on the island, and we had a Cambodian, an army guy who spoke their language and was to be an interpreter and negotiate and all that stuff. And the belief was that there wasn't much resistance to be had on the island. They probably, a few indigenous folks, but and some troops, the gunboats that took the crew, and they say, give us back those people. And that isn't what happened. What happened, as it turned out, was there's a pretty well-equipped battalion of troops there.
So what, like 1,000 guys, something like that?
Probably in the hundreds, 200 or 300 would be my. But they occupied all of the high ground. And they knew if we were coming, we had to come to the only place you could land, in those beaches.
Yeah.
So those beaches were pretty well covered, and they had disciplined fire. They waited for the first aircraft to land. The squadron commander of the 21st SOS was the aircraft commander of the first aircraft. He came up to the shore, turned tail toward the trees, landed with his nose gear on the waterline. And as Marines began to offload out his ramp, and the second helicopter was coming in to land beside him, that's when they opened fire. On the other side of the island, I guess they were still in a hover, getting in position to put down. So there were 4 helicopters.
Right.
Basically at a zero airspeed situation at the landing zones when they opened fire. The squadron commander of the 21st SOS immediately lost one engine, and he saw damage to his main gearbox. Chip lights, which means you got
metal in the gearbox,
loose metal in your gearbox that turns the main rotor.
Right.
And he only had one engine. Although
and he was heavily loaded with fuel, I guess, at that point.
He was lighter than, he had used a good bit of fuel because it was 140 miles more than I'd like to get out there. But he knew he didn't have enough power to fly.
Right.
But he figured he would get airborne and see if he could, get it going and do what he could do. And what he did was he did kind of a leapfrog thing, where you was a helicopter pilot would understand what's going on here. He pulled up, got airborne, started to get some airspeed. As he was doing that, the rotor speed slows down because one engine can't keep it going full blast with that much collective pull, because it's just taking that much of a bite into the air to try and produce the lift. It does this, and then as the rotor speed slowed down, he leveled his helicopter, landed on the water, put the collective back down. Rotor speed then rebuilds because the engine's at full bore, and now it can, without carrying the weight of the helicopter, it can spin again.
Did he offload Marines there as well?
Yeah. Yes,
Okay,
all of his
so the Marines are off.
So he is able to take off like 3 times this way. But each time he lost rotor speed, lost the ability to fly, and lands on the water. By the third time, the aircraft's too heavy because it adds water every time it gets in the water. And as it takes on water, it gets too heavy and he can't get it airborne again. But he's a quarter mile out to sea.
So he's safe.
And they sank there, and their one of their flight mechanics, we called them flight engineers later by the time you joined the helicopter business. One of the flight mechanics sank with the aircraft. His name was Woody Rumbaugh. According to the co-pilot, he was the seat engineer between the two pilots, and he had helped the co-pilot jettison his window and get out.
Yeah,
but he was unable to get out himself, and he went down with the helicopter. Was never seen. Those 3 guys got picked up by the lead aircraft of the next wave. They picked him up by hoist, those 3
Gotcha.
guys. And then they flew back into the island to offload Marines. Now, the Western Beach had a full load of 2 or 3 aircraft at this time. One aircraft had gone in south of the location and offloaded, got us into the tree line. So there was one helicopter load separated on the south, a couple of 100 yards from the main force that was setting up a defensive perimeter up here. And on the eastern beach, there was 2 helicopters that had gone in there. Both of them got shot down. One was shot down in place, and the crew and the Marines were on the island. The other helicopter, that 650-gallon ox tank, ignited and pretty much exploded while they were in a low hover. And that aircraft tumbled into the water there on the water line, and it was a real mess. That's where the killed were. We think all 10 out of the 13 or so, or 13 of those guys were probably killed right there in that wreck. The flight mechanic on that aircraft that got out, I think through the ramp by going underwater and out the ramp. And he saw what was going on out there. They had Cambodians running around on the beach shooting at them.
Hope you enjoyed General Comer. We're going to replay or finish the interview tomorrow. Really got to know your history, and that's one hell of a mission they went on to rescue the crew of the Maguez. As he said, killed 41 soldiers, American servicemen, in order to rescue 40 civilians. So really an amazing story. And General Comer that was the last combat mission of Southeast Asia. and then he was on the first combat mission of Southwest Asia in the Gulf War. So we'll get into that down the road, but we're big in history, into history here at CDM, and so you're going to get a lot of it. So stay tuned. Thank you for joining us today. Great guest, a really great show. Tomorrow we'll be here at 10 o'clock, 10 to noon, Monday through Friday Eastern. And Sunday at 2, we have the Georgia show. And at 4 o'clock Eastern, the Colorado show. And we'll be taping a Eurobytes over the weekend as well. And probably one of the SITREP shows as well. So a lot going on here at CDM. Thanks for joining us today. Hope you enjoy what we're putting out. And please tell your friends about it. Put us in your daily scan, morning, noon, and night, cdm.press. You'll get news you won't get anywhere else, I guarantee you. And we're on podcast. We're streaming live on X, Gettr, Rumble, and multiple channels. You can find us. Just look for us, tell your friends, and help spread the word at CDM. So we're the new wire service without the global spin. We'll see you tomorrow at 10 o'clock.